Hey guys, Dimension Master Studios here, how y'all doing? So I'm sure as you guys know, recently Netflix gave us part 2 of season 1 of the latest season of Ninjago, Dragons Rising, giving us the first full season in the latest era of Ninjago, Dragons Rising. And in my opinion, when it comes to season 1 of Dragons Rising, it is definitely a season of Ninjago. Yeah, in case it isn't obvious by the title and the thumbnail of this video, for me personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of Dragons Rising. I didn't think that the season was bad by any means, far from it, but at the same time, I didn't think the season was that great either. So in today's video, I decided that I wanted to review the season for you guys, and I wanted to share my overall thoughts on the season. So let's get into this whole thing, and in case it isn't obvious, spoilers for Season 1 of Dragons Rising, also potential spoilers for Season 2 of Dragons Rising, because there are some things that I'm going to talk about later on in the video that do potentially relate to stuff that could end up happening in Part 2. And so with all that out of the way, let's get into this whole thing. So for starters, just like always, I'm going to start off by going over the stuff that I liked when it came to the season, and then I'm going to go over the stuff that I didn't like when it came to the season. And starting off with the stuff that I liked, I want to go over the production of the season, because in my opinion, the production value of Dragons Rising is really good. Just like always, the voice actors did an absolutely fantastic job when it came to the season. I feel like the music was really good when it came to the season, and I really liked the animation of Dragons Rising. You can definitely tell that the animation in Dragons Rising is different compared to the animation that we've gotten in the previous Wild Brain seasons, but in my opinion, the animation honestly looks really good. The fight scenes all look really great, the lighting is handled really well, the stills all look fantastic, and overall, when it comes to the animation, I do feel like it is really good. Admittedly, I do feel like at times there can be some moments that do look a bit oversaturated in my opinion, and I feel like the colors pop a bit more than they should have. But overall, again, I feel like the animation is honestly really good, and when it comes to the production value of Dragons Rising, like I said, I thought it was really great. Up next, I want to talk about the new characters, starting off with the new villains, and I really liked what this season did with the villains. I really liked how when it came to the villains during the season, the ninja went up against a bunch of different villains during the season, meaning that the ninja went up against a bunch of different kind of villains during the season. You had villains who were more comedic, like Dorama and Rafton, for example, villains who were more evil for the sake of being evil, like Dr. LaRoe and Empress Beatrix, and villains with more complex motivations, like Lord Roz. And I feel like for the most part, the villains were honestly handled really well when it came to the season. The only real exceptions, though, in my opinion, were Dorama and Dr. LaRoe. I wasn't really a big fan of either one of them during the season, mainly because I thought the two of them were both kind of boring during the events of Dragons Rising, but when it came to the rest of the major antagonists, I thought that they were all pretty good when it came to the season. For starters, we have Empress Beatrix, and overall, I thought that she was pretty good when it came to the season. Like I said, when it comes to Empress Beatrix, she is an evil for the sake of being evil bad guy, and her main overall goal is to conquer all the different realms. But overall, when it came to Empress Beatrix, I thought that there were some things about her that were interesting when it came to the season. For starters, it's interesting that when it comes to Empress Beatrix, she's actually related to another elemental master, with that being her sister Zeatrix, and she was actually the one who inherited their father's elemental power, and when it comes to Beatrix, she is really jealous about this, which I found to be pretty interesting. I thought it was really interesting learning about her history with Roz, and I'm gonna get back into that when I talk about Roz. It was also really interesting seeing Empress Beatrix slowly growing more and more insane over the events of the season, with her becoming more and more determined to conquer all the realms and her wanting to take down the ninja. I feel like Empress Beatrix was involved in some pretty good fight scenes when it came to the season, and overall when it came to Empress Beatrix, I thought that she was pretty good during the season. That being said, though, her defeat, in my opinion, feels kind of anticlimactic, given the fact that when it comes to Beatrix, she's defeated with Aaron and Sora overpowering her, and then she gets sent through a Mergequake, and that's it. That is the last time that we ever see of her when it comes to the season, and all we learn about her after that is that Empress Beatrix went into hiding and no one saw her after she went into the Mergequake. So again, I feel like her defeat overall felt kind of anticlimactic, but I feel like for the most part when it came to Empress Beatrix, she was pretty good overall. Up next we have Rapton, and Rapton was another new character who I honestly really liked when it came to the season. Like I said earlier, when it comes to Rapton, he's meant to be a more comedic villain when it comes to Ninjago, and I feel like when it came to Rapton, he was pretty good in that department. He had some decently funny moments during the events of the season, and I did like the running gag of him saying or doing one thing and a member of the Imperium Army correcting him. Again, I thought that was kind of funny. And I feel like Rapton in general honestly had some pretty decent moments during the events of the season. Also, when it comes to Rapton, I like that towards the end of the season, he ended up swapping sides and he decided to fight alongside the ninja in the resistance against Empress Beatrix because he realized how terrible of a person Beatrix was. And when it came to Rapton, he wanted to keep on living in the world, and that is something that I did like. And overall, when it came to Rapton, again, I thought that he was honestly a pretty good character when it came to the season. And then finally, we have Lord Roz, and honestly, Roz ended up being my favorite new character that we got when it came to Dragons Rising. I really liked Roz during this season. For starters, I feel like Roz had this really intimidating presence when it came to the season, and I feel like when it came to the season, in basically any situation where he was in some kind of position of power, he meant business. And I feel like one of the reasons why Roz worked so well as this intimidating presence was because of the amazing voice acting that was done by Ryan Drummond. He was absolutely fantastic as Roz during the season. Not only that, but I also liked what we learned about Roz and Beatrix, with the season revealing that Roz was actually the entire reason why Beatrix became the Empress of Imperium in the first place, with Roz essentially manipulating Empress Beatrix into killing her dad and imprisoning her sister, also that way she could end up becoming the Empress of Imperium, and so the two of them could end up eventually capturing a Source Dragon. And this is something that I find to be really interesting when it comes to Lord Roz, with him essentially almost being the main antagonist of the season, since he was the one responsible for Beatrix becoming the Empress of the Imperium in the first place. Again, I think that is pretty interesting. I also like the big reveal at the end of the season that when it comes to Lord Roz, he was actually using Beatrix the entire time, and he's actually secretly working for someone else, and they are trying to capture Source Dragons. And this is obviously setting up something for Season 2, and based on the set leaks for Season 2, it looks like Roz is going to be returning during that season, which is something that I am really looking forward to, because again, I really liked Roz when it came to this season, and overall when it came to Lord Roz during the events of Dragons Rising, again, like I said, he was honestly my favorite new character that we got when it came to the season. So again, overall when it came to the villains during the events of Dragons Rising, I feel like for the most part, they were honestly handled really well when it came to the season. Moving on to the new heroes though, there were really only 4 major reoccurring heroes that we got when it came to Dragons Rising, with those heroes being Aaron, Sora, Ryu, and Wildfire. And when it comes to Aaron and Sora, I'm gonna hold off on talking about them until I get to talking about the rest of the ninja. So for now, let's focus on Ryu and Wildfire. And when it came to Ryu, he was okay in my opinion during the season. He had a couple of decent moments, but overall, I don't really have that much to say about Ryu. Also, when it comes to Ryu, it's pretty obvious that he's supposed to be the cute, marketable baby character that a lot of franchises have been including recently, like Grogu in The Mandalorian or Baby Groot in the MCU, for example. And again, when it comes to Ryu, it's obvious that he's supposed to be the cute, marketable baby character. But again, when it came to Ryu, he had a couple of decent moments during the season, although overall I don't have that much to say about him. And then when it comes to Wildfire, she was another new character who I honestly really liked when it came to the season. For starters, I liked that when it came to Wildfire, she was completely unhinged during the events of the season, and she didn't really care about anyone else. I honestly thought that led to a lot of pretty funny moments. But at the same time, when it came to Wildfire, she ended up having this arc during Dragons Rising revolving around her learning to care about others, which is something that I did like. I also thought that Wildfire's backstory was really interesting, with her essentially being the Ninjago equivalent of Superman and her being raised by dragons her entire life. I thought that was really interesting. And finally, I really liked her dynamic with Kai during the season. These two had absolutely hilarious interactions all throughout the events of the season. And one other thing that I found to be hilarious is that when it came to Wildfire, she somehow managed to make Kai look level-headed in comparison to her, and I didn't know it was possible for Kai to be level-headed, but here we are. And overall, when it comes to Wildfire, like I said, she was another new character who I really liked when it came to the season. As for the other new heroes that we got during the season, admittedly, I don't have as much to say about them, mainly because when it came to a lot of the other new heroes, they didn't appear in that many episodes when it came to the season. However, there are a few new heroes who I do want to quickly go over. For starters, we have Euphrasia, the new Elemental Master of Wind, and Euphrasia was okay in my opinion when it came to the season. She's only in one episode, so I don't really have that much to say about her overall, but I do think it's interesting that we have a new Elemental Master of Wind when it comes to the franchise. That being said, though, I feel like the season doesn't do that good a job at explaining how or why Euphrasia has wind powers. As for the how, as we learned during the season, Euphrasia was able to use her powers after the merge, and that's really all the explanation that we get on it. And as for the why, it's never really explained why Euphrasia got wind powers, and I do hope that if Euphrasia makes another appearance in the show at some point in the future, we do get a proper explanation as to why she has wind powers. After this, we have Geo, the Elemental Master of Fusion, and there's a couple things that I want to say about this guy. For starters, I like the idea that when it comes to Geo, he's a non-human Elemental Master. For a very long time when it comes to Ninjago, for the most part, we've really only seen human Elemental Masters. Obviously, there have been some exceptions like Zane, who's a robot, and Lloyd, who's part Oni and part Dragon, but again, I think it's honestly really cool that when it comes to Ninjago, we have another non-human Elemental Master when it comes to the show. I think that's honestly pretty interesting. Plus, in addition to that, I like the idea that when it comes to Geo, he's a Munz with the coloring of a gecko. I think that's honestly something pretty interesting. Another new character who I want to quickly talk about is Fritz. Fritz plays a very small role when it comes to Dragon's Rising, but I still want to bring him up, mainly because of the fact that Fritz is a formling, and for those of you who don't know, I personally really like Season 11, especially Akita, and I honestly really like that when it comes to the show, they're finally doing more things with the formlings again, and it honestly gives me hope that if the show is doing more stuff with formlings again, it means that when it comes to Akita, she has a greater chance of returning when it comes to Dragon's Rising. So honestly, when it comes to Fritz, he has given me hope that one of my favorite characters in the show will finally make a return at some point soon. And finally, we have Ericor, the Last Djinn, and I also have a couple things that I want to say about this guy. For starters, I like that when it came to Ericor, he wasn't actually an antagonist when it came to the season, and instead he was an ally who helped out Nia and Sora. That was something that I liked. I also found it interesting that when it came to Ericor, he actually knew Dragon Sora, and as it turns out, Dragon Sora was actually from Ninjago. I also found that to be pretty interesting. And finally, it was interesting that when it came to Ericor, he wasn't actually in Ninjago when it was destroyed, and instead Ericor was in a different realm, yet he still has a bit of Ninjago with him, considering the fact that he has that grain of sand that we see him with during the episode The Last Djinn, and we also see the grain of sand slowly grow bigger over the events of the episode, and the season also suggests that when it comes to Ninjago, it could theoretically get recreated at some point, which again is something that I do find to be pretty interesting, and when it came to Ericor overall in my opinion, he was a character who I liked during the season. I thought he was good. And so when it came to the new characters during the season, overall I thought that they were alright. Admittedly, I liked the new villains more in comparison to a lot of the new heroes that we got. Although, to be fair, when it came to a lot of the new heroes, they didn't make that many appearances when it came to the season, so I don't have as much to say about them. Whereas when it came to a lot of the new villains, they appeared in a lot of the episodes during the season, so I have more to say about them. But when it came to the new heroes, I didn't think they were bad by any means. Again, I just don't have as much to say about them because they didn't make that many appearances during the season. And finally, there is one more major positive that I want to go over when it comes to Dragons Rising, and that would be Lloyd. I really liked Lloyd during the season, and honestly, he was my favorite part of the season. Now, if you guys have seen some of my videos that I made post-Crystallized, then you guys would know that one of my biggest problems with Crystallized was Lloyd. I really didn't like how Lloyd was handled during the events of Crystallized, mainly with him constantly fixating on the idea of Harumi changing and her becoming a better person, despite all the horrible stuff that Harumi has done over the events of the show, while at the same time Lloyd was actively against the idea of Garmadon changing and him becoming a better person, even though when it came to Garmadon, he wanted to change and he was trying to become a better person in his own way. And when it came to Lloyd during the events of Crystallized, I honestly thought that he was really unlikable during the season, and overall, I really didn't like how Lloyd was handled during Crystallized, so I was worried about how he was going to be handled during this season, but like I said, when it came to Lloyd, he honestly ended up being my favorite part of the season. I really liked Lloyd during Dragons Rising. For starters, I really liked that when it came to Lloyd during the season, we saw him as a mentor with him teaching Eren and Sora how to be ninjas. This is something that I really liked, mainly because this is supposed to be a continuation of Lloyd's master storyline, something that we haven't seen in the show ever since season 7, so I honestly really like that the show decided to bring this back. At the same time, I also like that when it came to Lloyd, he decided to teach Eren and Sora how to be ninjas based on his own experiences and what he went through, while at the same time he does take a lot of inspiration from Sensei Wu. That's something else that I really liked. I also liked how on a few occasions during the events of Dragons Rising, Lloyd didn't help out characters as a mentor, but instead he helped them out as the Green Ninja. This is something that I liked because it showed us that when it came to Lloyd, he recognized that he wasn't fully capable of being a sensei yet, so instead he decided to help people based on how he knew how to help them. That's something else that I really like. And finally, the last and by far the biggest thing that I really liked about Lloyd when it came to this season was him pushing characters to be the best versions of themselves. This is one big thing that I really liked because this was a really big part of Lloyd's character during the Wildbrain era of the show. During the Wildbrain era of the show, one thing that we constantly saw when it came to Lloyd was him pushing different characters to be the best versions of themselves. We saw that when it came to characters like Akita, Okino, Blazy H Speed, Twitchy Tim, and more. And I honestly really like that when it came to Dragons Rising, we got a chance to see this kind of thing continue when it came to Lloyd. And really, when it came to Lloyd's characterization during the season, I thought it was handled really well during the season. And Lloyd's storyline during the season of him becoming a better mentor as the season went on, with him teaching Eren and Sora more, is something that I really liked. And overall, when it came to Lloyd during the season, like I said, he was honestly my favorite part of Dragons Rising. So that's it when it came to the stuff that I liked about Dragons Rising. However, before I move on and I talk about the stuff that I didn't like, I want to go over something that I'm pretty mixed on when it comes to Dragons Rising, and that would be the rest of the original ninja. When it came to Kai, Jay, Cole, Zane, and Nia during the season, all of them were basically replaced as main characters, with Eren and Sora becoming the new main characters of Dragons Rising. Lloyd, however, isn't in this situation, with him still being a main character when it comes to Dragons Rising, but when it comes to Kai, Jay, Cole, Zane, and Nia, again, they aren't main characters anymore when it comes to Dragons Rising. They'll still be around when it comes to this era of Ninjago, however, their roles in seasons won't be as big in comparison to their roles in previous seasons. And when it comes to the original ninja during Dragons Rising, like I said, I'm pretty mixed on them. Now, I want to get one big positive out of the way right now. I really liked the characterization of all the ninja during the season. I honestly feel like when it came to the characterization of each of the ninja during the season, it was handled really, really well, with all the ninja acting like themselves and doing stuff that they would normally do. Overall, when it came to the ninja, again, their characterization during the season was really, really great, and in my opinion, it was definitely a massive improvement compared to what we got during Crystallized. But now let's talk about the stuff that I'm mixed on. For starters, when it comes to Dragons Rising, all throughout the season, it constantly builds up the idea of the original ninja returning and all of them reuniting and working as a team again. And this is something that I do like, given the fact that when it comes to the ninja in universe, they were all separated from each other as a result of the merge, and they spent years apart from one another. I feel like it makes perfect sense that the season would build up the idea of the original ninja returning. However, a problem that I have with this is that after we do see a member of the original ninja team finally return, when it comes to the ninja, they end up getting separated and they split up from each other a lot during the events of the season. And this is something that I didn't like when it came to Dragons Rising, mainly because it went against the idea of the ninja team all reuniting and them working as a team again. And with the ninja team constantly splitting up all throughout the events of the season, it made the team feel less like a team during the season because they were all going out and doing their own individual things and not working as a unit that much during the season. Again, this is something that I wasn't the biggest fan of. However, that's not all, because another issue that I have when it came to the original Ninja during the season is that when it came to the original Ninja during the season, I felt like the original Ninja didn't get that much to do during Dragons Rising. When it came to the original Ninja during the events of Dragons Rising, it felt like they would get either one or two big things for the season that were important for one or two episodes of the season, but then after that episode came to an end, that big thing often wouldn't get brought up. And when it came to the ninja, it felt like they wouldn't get anything to do that was unique to them during the events of the season. And this is something else that I didn't like when it came to the season, mainly because when it came to the stuff that the original ninja did get during the season, I really liked it, and I was really invested when it came to the stuff that the original ninja did get during Dragon's Rising. For starters, we have Kai, and Kai had more screen time in comparison to a lot of the other ninja during the season, and I feel like when it came to Kai, he was handled better than most of the other original ninja during the season. Mainly because of his dynamic with Wildfire, I thought it was absolutely hilarious during the season, like I said earlier, and I really liked that when it came to Kai during the season, we got a chance to see him as a mentor during the season, and we got a chance to see a more smart side of Kai during the season. That was something that I liked. After this, we have Nia, and just like Kai, she also had more screen time in comparison to most of the other original ninja during the season. And when it came to Nia, she was alright in my opinion during the season. During episode 4, we found out that when it came to Nia, she was the champion of the Craglings and she was protecting them from the dragons. And that is something that I really liked, but we only saw it for one episode and that was it. And then after that, it felt like Nia didn't get that much. She had a bit of a dynamic with Sora during part 2, although admittedly I don't have that much to say about it. Also, speaking of Nia during part 2, there's one thing that I do want to bring up. During the episode The Last Djinn, I feel like it was a missed opportunity that Nia didn't bring up Nanakan at any point during that episode. I feel like it would have made sense given the fact that Nia met Nanakan and she remembers him because she remembers the events of Skybound. And again, I feel like it was a missed opportunity for Nia not to reference Nanakan during that episode. After this, we have Zane, and he was brought back about halfway through the season, but still, when it came to Zane, I liked what he got during the season, mainly with Zane trying to learn more about the portals, and at the same time, Zane was worrying about and he was trying to find Pixel, which is something that I did like. And then we have Cole and Jay, and the two of them were introduced really late into the season, meaning that they got even less screen time in comparison to the rest of the original Ninja. When it comes to Cole, I thought it was interesting with him helping out the Finders and them fighting against the Hoarder, and also us learning about Cole's rock form. That was honestly pretty cool. But just like when it came to Nia being the champion of the Craglings, we only saw that for one episode, and that was it. Also, when it came to Cole, at one point during the season, we saw him going after the mysterious Sensei Wu spirits, but we never see him after that moment, and I thought it would have been really interesting if we learned about what Cole found when he followed the spirits. Hopefully, when it comes to season 2, we finally get an answer on that. And then we have Jay, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys. In my opinion, season 1 of Dragon's Rising is where Jay is at his worst. I really didn't like how Jay was handled during the season, mainly because Jay barely got anything to do during the season, and Jay was barely in the season. When it came to Jay, he made a couple of appearances during the first 2 episodes of Dragon's Rising. He then made a 20-second cameo appearance during the episode The Administration, and that was it. When it comes to Jay, he has less than a minute of screen time during Dragon's Rising, and in my opinion, that doesn't make any sense. When it comes to the rest of the original Ninja, they all had a decent amount of screen time during the season, plus when it came to each of the original Ninja during the season, they all had an episode dedicated to them and the stuff that they were going through when it came to the season, except for Jay, because again, like I said, he's barely in the season and he has less than a minute worth of screen time. And that's something that I really didn't like when it came to the season. Not only that, but when it came to the ninja, they never found out about Jay and they never learned that he was an agent of the administration, which also doesn't make any sense in my opinion. And finally, when it comes to Jay being an agent of the administration, I feel like this also wasn't handled the best when it came to the season, mainly because we don't learn anything about it during Dragon's Rising. When it comes to Jay being an agent of the administration, we don't know what he's doing there. We don't know how long he's been there. We don't know why he's at the administration. Again, we don't really learn anything about Jay being an agent. Also, when it comes to Jay being an agent of the administration, the season is pretty vague on why Jay is working for them. It's not clear whether or not Jay is just pretending to be an agent of the administration or if there's something else going on with him. It's not entirely clear given the way that he acts during the episode. But again, when it comes to Jay being an agent of the administration, like I said, I feel like this wasn't handled very well. And when it comes to Jay in general during Dragon's Rising, I really didn't like how he was handled during the season. And I really hope that when it comes to Dragon's Rising Season 2, Jay ends up getting some more screen time during that season, and he finally gets a chance to reunite with the rest of the original Ninja team. That is something that I would really like. But overall, when it comes to the original Ninja during the season, with Jay being the only real exception, again, even though it felt like the original Ninja didn't get that much during Dragon's Rising, with Lloyd being the obvious exception, I do still feel like when it came to the rest of the original Ninja, the stuff that they did get was honestly really interesting, and I was really invested when it came to this stuff. And honestly, I just wish that the original Ninja got more screen time during Dragon's Rising, so that way there could have been more of a focus on this stuff. I thought that would have been something really interesting. But now that that's out of the way, let's move on and talk about the stuff that I didn't like when it came to Dragon's Rising, starting off with the original Ninja getting replaced. Like I said earlier, when it came to the original Ninja during the season, all of them, with the exception of Lloyd, were essentially replaced as main characters when it came to Dragon's Rising, with Aaron and Sora becoming the new main characters, and honestly, I really didn't like this when it came to the season, but I want to make one thing very, very clear. My problem isn't that we have new main characters when it comes to Ninjago. I think that on paper, us getting new main characters is an interesting idea when it comes to the franchise. My problem is that the show doesn't handle the transition well. For starters, we have Crystallized. Crystallized was the final season to feature the original Ninja in some kind of major role. However, I feel like Crystallized didn't handle any of the original Ninja well, with Kai, Jay, Cole, and Zane getting basically nothing to do during Dragon's Rising, with Zane being the only real exception because of his emotion storyline during Part 1, and when it came to Lloyd and Nia, Crystallized undid a ton of character development that the two of them had gone through, so by the time Crystallized came to an end, it felt like none of the Ninja got satisfying conclusions. And really, that's how Crystallized in general felt. When it came to Crystallized, it was supposed to be this big conclusion to the previous era of Ninjago storytelling, But honestly, given how ambiguous and unsatisfying a lot of things felt when it came to Crystallize, especially the ending, Crystallize didn't really feel like a satisfying conclusion, or really like a conclusion at all when it came to Ninjago, and I feel like that could especially be seen with the original Ninja, and us going from a season that doesn't handle any of the original Ninja well, to a season where most of them have been replaced as main characters, is something that I didn't like. Plus, in addition to that, another problem that I have with this is that when it came to the original Ninja, like I said, I feel like they weren't handled that well when it came to season 1. Again, Lloyd's the only exception because I really liked him during the season, but when it came to the rest of the original Ninja, again, I feel like they weren't handled the best, mainly with the season building up the idea of the original Ninja returning and them all working as a team during the events of the season, yet the Ninja were constantly splitting up during the events of Dragons Rising, and also, like I said, I felt like when it came to the original Ninja, they didn't get that much to do during the season, but when it came to the stuff that they did, yeah, I was honestly really invested when it came to that stuff, and I honestly just wish that when it came to the original Ninja, they had gotten more screen time during the season, so that way we could have seen more of this stuff. Now, I get why that kind of thing happened. When it came to Dragons Rising, the original Ninja didn't get as much screen time during the season, so that way more screen time could be given to Eren and Sora, who are supposed to be new main characters for Dragons Rising. However, Eren and Sora both relate into the last issue that I have with the original Ninja getting replaced, and my last issue is that honestly, I wasn't really a big fan of either Eren or Sora during the season. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think that Eren and Sora are bad characters by any means. I do think that Eren and Sora are both likable characters when it comes to Ninjago, and the two of them both have kinda cool backstories. My problem though is that when it comes to Eren and Sora, in my opinion, the two of them aren't that interesting as characters. Let me explain what I'm talking about. For starters, we have Eren. And when it comes to Eren, like I said, I think that he is a likable character when it comes to Ninjago, and his backstory is kinda cool with him getting separated from his parents during the merge. Also, he was initially a fan of the ninja, but now he gets the chance to be a ninja. That's kinda cool in my opinion. Although, admittedly, I don't have that much to say about it. And really, when it comes to Eren in general, I just don't have that much to say about him. When it comes to Eren's character, it isn't very interesting in my opinion. When it comes to Eren, a big part of his character is, like I said earlier, him being a fan of the ninja. Meaning that when it comes to Eren, he's essentially meant to serve as an audience surrogate, and this idea on paper I think is interesting. However, I feel like overall when it comes to Eren being a ninja fan, this isn't handled that well. Mainly because I feel like this is one of the only things about his character. Well, that and one other thing that I'm going to talk about later. Also, when it comes to Eren being a ninja fan, I feel like it can get kind of annoying after a while. So, again, when it comes to Eren's character, I don't think it's very interesting. And when it comes to Eren's storyline during the season, admittedly, I feel like Eren doesn't really have a storyline when it comes to the season. There is a small thing with him learning how to transfer his Spinjitzu power to objects. However, the season never really focuses on the storyline that much, in my opinion, mainly because when it comes to Eren doing this kind of thing, we only see it 3 times during the season. Once during episode 3, once during episode 13, and then once during the finale, and that's it. So again, we really only see this 3 times over the course of the season. And when it comes to this story, I feel like Eren didn't really grow or change that much as a result of it. And overall, when it comes to Eren, like I said, I feel like he didn't really have that much of a storyline when it came to this season. But that's not all, because there's also a couple of problems that I have when it comes to Eren. For starters, one thing that we constantly see when it comes to Eren over the course of the season is him very quickly, and in some cases almost instantly, getting and understanding certain concepts when it comes to being a ninja. And this is something that I really didn't like, mainly because when it came to the original ninja, they had to constantly train and practice in order to understand a bunch of different things when it came to being a ninja. Yet, when it came to Eren, like I said, he was able to understand that stuff really quickly, and in some cases, almost instantly. Like, take the training course for example. During the pilot season, we saw Kai going through this whole montage revolving around him going through the training course until eventually Kai learned how the training course worked, and not only that, he even found a way to outsmart Sensei Wu and get around his tea drinking time limit. And this is something that I really liked because it showed us that when it came to Kai, with all that hard work and practice that he put into going through the training course, in the end, it paid off. Meanwhile, when it comes to Eren, when he went through the training course for the first time during episode 3, he got it almost instantly and he had basically no problems going through it. And this is something that we constantly see over the events of the season. Like I said, Eren very quickly, and in some cases almost instantly, understanding and getting so many concepts when it comes to being a ninja. Whereas again, when it came to the original ninja, they had to constantly train and practice in order to understand a lot of that stuff. So again, that's something that I wasn't the biggest fan of. However, the other problem that I have when it comes to Eren is him knowing Spinjitzu. Towards the beginning of the season, we learned that when it comes to Eren, he knows Spinjitzu and he was able to learn it all on his own. However, according to the season, it's impossible to learn Spinjitzu all on your own. And this is consistent with the previous seasons of Ninjago, given the fact that when it comes to characters who have learned Spinjitzu, they always had to learn it from someone else. That was the case with characters like the original ninja, Misako, Asphira, and more. Yet, when it comes to Eren, that's not the case, and he was able to learn Spinjitzu without anyone teaching him, and the show never explains this. The show never explains how or why Eren was able to learn Spinjitzu without a teacher. He was just able to do it. And the only real explanation that we get is that Eren taught himself, which still doesn't answer the question. Also, when it comes to Eren, he's a Spinjitzu prodigy. But once again, the season never explains that. So when it comes to Eren, in my opinion, him knowing Spinjitzu doesn't make a lot of sense, and like I said, the show never explains how and why Eren was able to learn Spinjitzu without a teacher. Meanwhile, when it came to everyone else who learned Spinjitzu, they needed a teacher. Not only that, but there's something else about Eren knowing Spinjitzu that I want to go over. Towards the beginning of episode 5 of Dragon's Rising, Lloyd says that when it comes to Eren, he's actually better at using Spinjitzu compared to the original ninja when they first started to use it. And once again, the season never explains this. The season never explains how Eren's better compared to the original ninja when it came to them starting off with using Spinjitzu. He just is better, although I'm not entirely sure how. When it came to the original ninja during the pilot season and season 1, back when they were first starting out, we saw that when it came to the original ninja, they were properly trained in the art of using Spinjitzu by Sensei Wu, and we saw what the ninja were capable of doing, how powerful they were, and how in control of their Spinjitzu they were. Meanwhile, when it comes to Eren during the events of Dragon's Rising, he never had any formal training when it came to using Spinjitzu. He's essentially using a broken version of Spinjitzu, and something that we constantly see over the course of the season is that Eren doesn't have full control over his Spinjitzu. So again, when it comes to Eren, how is it that he's apparently better than the original ninja when it came to them using Spinjitzu when they first started using it? Again, like I said, the season never explains this. And then moving on to Sora, it's basically the exact same situation. Just like Eren, I think that Sora is a likable character when it comes to Dragon's Rising, and her backstory is kinda cool, with her initially being from the Imperium, and her being the inventor of the Photech devices. Also, her real name isn't even Sora, it's actually Anna, although, once again, I don't really have a lot to say about it. And once again, when it comes to Sora, I just don't have that much to say about her. When it comes to Sora, once again, I feel like her character isn't very interesting, with Sora being a mechanic and her being good at technology, and that's it. That's really all there is when it comes to her character, in my opinion. And then when it comes to Sora's storyline during the season, it was okay, in my opinion. Sora's storyline during Dragon's Rising revolved around her learning how to use her powers, and her eventually accepting and embracing her role as a ninja and as a member of the team. And again, the storyline was okay in my opinion, although there is a problem that I have with the storyline, and it's that when it comes to the storyline that Sora got during the season, this is the exact same storyline that Nia got all the way back during Possession, because Nia's storyline during Possession also revolved around her learning how to use her powers and her accepting and embracing her role as a ninja. So the show having Sora repeat a storyline that another ninja already went through is something that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but that's not all, because there's also a couple of problems that I have when it comes to Sora, and they both relate to her powers. Now, during the events of Dragon's Rising, we learned that when it comes to Sora, she has powers. Not only that, but she has the ability to control technology. Now, on paper, I think that this is an interesting idea. However, there's something about Sora's powers in particular that I'm not the biggest fan of, and that is the season referring to Sora's powers as elemental powers. And in my opinion, technology doesn't make a lot of sense as an elemental power, mainly because of how different it is compared to every other elemental power that we've seen. Over the years, when it comes to Ninjago, we have seen a lot of elemental powers, and when it comes to elemental powers, we've essentially seen certain rules get established when it comes to elemental powers. However, when it comes to technology, it ends up breaking those rules in ways that don't really make a lot of sense, in my opinion. For starters, one thing that we've constantly seen when it comes to elemental powers is that in order to get elemental powers, an elemental master needs to be related to a former elemental master. That isn't the case when it comes to Sora, and during the season, we learned that Sora isn't actually related to an elemental master, and for the most part, when it comes to Dragon's Rising up until the end, Sora's only really able to use her powers after they get sparked by Ryu. And that's also something that we've never seen when it comes to elemental powers. Someone essentially only being able to use their elemental powers after they get sparked from a dragon. Again, we've never really seen that. Also, one other thing that we've seen when it comes to elemental powers, we see that when it comes to all of them, they're all based on these things that make up the world and naturally exist in it in one way or another. Except that's not the case for technology, because technology isn't a naturally existing thing that helps make up the world. When it comes to technology, it is a man made thing. Once again, it's pretty different compared to all the other elemental powers that we've seen. And these are just some examples, but again, when it comes to technology, in my opinion, it ends up breaking a lot of the rules that we've seen when it comes to elemental powers in ways that don't make a lot of sense, in my opinion. However, that's not all, because another problem that I have when it comes to Sora's powers during the season is that, in my opinion, technology is way too overpowered when it comes to Dragon's Rising. Something that we constantly see during Dragon's Rising is that whenever the ninja are in some kind of really tough situation, once Sora is able to gain access to her powers, she's able to deal with whatever the ninja are going up against. And in my opinion, this took away a bit of the sense of danger when it came to Dragon's Rising, because again, when it came to Sora, if she was able to activate her powers, then everything would be fine. Her and Aaron were falling off the bridge during the first episode. Once Sora got access to her powers, she could reshape her mech and she could save herself, Aaron, and Ryu. The ninja were having trouble going up against the Photech devices towards the end of Part 1 of Dragon's Rising, but after Sora got access to her powers, she could shut down all the Photech devices. The fighters were having trouble going up against the Hoarder. Once Sora got access to her powers, everything was fine. Again, when it comes to technology, it honestly felt way too overpowered when it came to Dragon's Rising. And again, when it comes to technology, I feel like it took away a bit of the sense of danger when it came to the season, because again, when it came to Sora, if she got access to her powers at one point or another during the season, then she could just end whatever tough situation the ninja were going through, which is something that I honestly didn't like that much when it came to the season. And so, overall, when it comes to Aaron and Sora, like I said, while I feel like the two of them aren't bad characters by any means, at the same time, I'm not really the biggest fan of either of them, because again, like I said, I think the two of them aren't very interesting. Plus, there are a couple of specific problems that I have when it comes to the two of them. But it is still just Season 1 of Dragons Rising, and it's entirely possible that when it comes to Season 2 of Dragons Rising, my opinions on these two could end up changing. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. Moving on, the next problem that I have when it comes to Dragons Rising would be the merge. Now, on paper, I think the merge is an interesting idea, with it being this massive event revolving around all the different realms colliding in order to create one gigantic realm that everyone lives on. This results in a massive shakeup of the status quo when it comes to the franchise, and at the same time, it can result in some interesting stories that can be told as a result of this. Again, on paper, I think the merge is an interesting idea. In practice, though, I feel like the merge wasn't handled that well when it came to Season 1, and there's a few problems that I have with it. For starters, I feel like the merge took away a lot of the mystery and importance of the other realms. One of the big things that I always found to be very appealing about the other realms is that when it comes to the other realms, they're meant to be these mysterious alternate dimensions that are different from Ninjago in one way or another. And whenever the ninja went inside of one of these realms, it always felt like this really big event because we got a chance to see inside of one of these mysterious alternate dimensions. And we could see what the world was like, who lived in the realm, what the culture of the realm was like, what dangers this realm faced, and more. Again, when it comes to the realms being these mysterious alternate dimensions, it's something that I really liked, and a big reason why I really enjoy seasons like Hunted and Season 11 is because when it comes to both these seasons, about half the runtime of the seasons is dedicated to the ninja being inside of other realms. Again, I like the idea of the realms being these alternate dimensions. Meanwhile, when it comes to Dragons Rising, I feel like a lot of the importance and mystery is taken away from the other realms because the realms aren't these different dimensions anymore. Instead, they're just different places that are in Ninjago, which, in my opinion, is a lot less interesting compared to them being alternate dimensions. Plus, at the same time, I feel like the realms are too accessible now, given the fact that when it comes to the ninja, they can very easily travel from one realm to another during the events of Dragons Rising. So whenever the ninja do end up going into another realm, it doesn't really feel like that big of an event anymore, because again, the realms, in my opinion, feel too accessible when it comes to Dragons Rising. So we have that. However, that's not my only problem that I have when it comes to the merge. The other problem that I have when it comes to the merge is how the merge affected other characters. When it comes to the merge, it basically acted as a way for the writers to wipe the slate clean when it came to Ninjago, and as a result of the merge, it essentially got rid of a bunch of the old pre-established characters when it came to Ninjago. And when it comes to the characters from the previous era of Ninjago who do end up appearing during this season, we have the original 6 ninja, Sensei Wu's spirit, Gulch, the Chancellor of the Geckos from Master of the Mountain, and that's it. Those are the only characters from the previous era of Ninjago who end up making an appearance in this season. Meanwhile, when it comes to literally everyone else, we get nothing when it comes to them. Sure, some characters do get referenced, like Pixel, Cyrus Borg, and Moro, for example, but none of them actually physically appear during the season. Again, there's only 8 characters from the previous era of Ninjago who end up making an appearance during Dragons Rising. Meanwhile, when it comes to literally everyone else, we know absolutely nothing about their whereabouts when it comes to Dragons Rising. We don't know what happened to all the other characters. We don't know where they ended up. We don't know when they're going to reappear when it comes to Dragons Rising. We don't even know if they're going to reappear when it comes to Dragons Rising. At San Diego Comic-Con, the writers said that there would be some things from the previous era of Ninjago that would not appear during the events of Dragons Rising. And this has made me very concerned about the future of the franchise, mainly because there's a lot of characters when it comes to Ninjago that I, and I'm sure many other fans, really want to see make a return at one point or another during Dragons Rising, but it's entirely possible that certain characters are not going to make an appearance during Dragons Rising, and the merge wiping the slate clean is the reason why, and this is something that I really don't like, especially since I feel like when it comes to Ninjago, there were a lot of characters who never got satisfying conclusions. They had pretty ambiguous endings, or they still had a lot of potential for future stories that could be told with them. But again, when it comes to these characters, we may never get a chance to see them again, and the merge wiping the slate clean and getting rid of all the old characters is the reason why. And like I said, this is something that I really don't like. Now, yes, like I said earlier, when it comes to Gulch, he did make an appearance when it comes to the season, and based on the set leaks for Season 2, it looks like Garmadon could end up returning next season, and honestly, this is something that I hope future seasons of Dragons Rising keep on doing. They keep on bringing back more and more of the legacy characters, so that way we can finally get some proper answers as to what happened to them. But again, when it comes to Dragons Rising and it essentially wiping the slate clean when it came to Ninjago and it's getting rid of all the old characters, like I said, that is something that I really didn't like. And like I said, I am very concerned about the future of the franchise and the futures of so many characters because we don't know who's going to show up when it comes to Dragons Rising. Now, there's one other thing related to the merge that I want to quickly go over, and this isn't something about the merge specifically, but it's something related to the merge, and I still want to bring it up. Towards the beginning of the season, we learned that when it comes to Sensei Wu, he apparently knew that the merge was going to happen, and as we learned during episode 11, as it turns out, Wu didn't tell the ninja about this or about the Dragon Cores and how they could be used to prevent the merge. And when it came to Sensei Wu, he never asked for the ninja's help when it came to finding the Dragon Cores. Meaning that when it comes to Dragons Rising, this is yet again another season where Wu didn't tell the ninja about something bad that he knew was going to happen, and we just had that happen when it came to Crystallize, with Wu not telling the ninja about him knowing about the Overlord's return. So the show going 2 seasons in a row with Wu not telling the ninja about something bad that he knew was going to happen, that is something that I didn't like. However, a big reason why I really don't like this is because of Season 11, and Wu's entire character arc during that season revolved around him taking accountability for not telling the ninja about bad stuff that he knew was going to happen. So once again, the show going 2 seasons in a row where Wu doesn't tell the ninja about something bad that he knew was going to happen, that is something that I didn't like. And so overall, when it comes to the merge during Season 1 of Dragons Rising, like I said, on paper I think it's a good idea. However, I feel like Season 1 didn't handle the merge that well overall. Moving on, another problem that I have when it comes to Dragons Rising would be the return of the 22-minute format. Yes, after all this time, the 22-minute format is back when it comes to Ninjago, and once again, on paper, I think that this was a good idea. However, I feel like Season 1 didn't handle the 22-minute format that well, mainly because I feel like when it came to multiple episodes, there was one of two problems when it came to them. Now, I'm not saying that every episode of Dragons Rising had either of these problems, because I feel like there were many episodes that we got in Dragons Rising that didn't have any problems with the 22-minute format. However, I feel like there were some episodes that had these problems with the episodes being 22 minutes long. The first one being that I feel like as a result of the episodes being 22 minutes long, it felt like some of the episodes didn't have that many interesting or exciting things that happened during them, and it resulted in the episodes feeling kind of boring in my opinion. This was an issue that I had when it came to the first 3 episodes of Dragons Rising, Gangs of the Sea, and the Administration. Now, that's not saying that everything in these episodes were boring, because I feel like there were some legitimately interesting things during these episodes, but again, for the most part, these episodes didn't really interest me that much, and overall, I thought they were kind of boring. However, I feel like there were some episodes that actually suffered from the opposite problem, where I feel like as a result of the episodes being 22 minutes long, it felt like there was too many things going on during the episodes, and it felt like certain things weren't handled as well as they could have been as a result of the episodes being so long. And this is a problem that I had when it came to episodes in the Photek storyline that we got towards the end of part 1. I'm not saying that these episodes were bad or anything, because I feel like there were some legitimately good episodes when it came to the Photek storyline. However, I feel like when it came to these episodes, there were too many things going on in these episodes, so it feels like certain things weren't explored as much as they could have been. Like, for example, Zane being stuck inside of that pod inside of the Imperium Monastery. That is never explained at any point during the events of Dragon's Rising as to why Zane was in that pod in the first place. Or for another example, we have Sora's guilt over her creating the photech devices. I feel like that isn't really explored when it comes to the season as a result of everything that was going on during the episodes. Again, like I said, I feel like not every episode ended up suffering from these problems, and I feel like this was more a problem when it came to part 1 in comparison to part 2. But again, I feel like when it comes to Dragon's Rising, there were multiple episodes that ended up suffering from the problem of either the episodes not being very interesting or the episodes containing too much stuff. So it felt like certain things weren't handled as well as they could have been. And then finally, we have my last and by far my biggest problem when it comes to Dragon's Rising, and that is this season ignoring stuff from Crystallized. Now, for those of you who have been watching my channel for a while, you are probably very confused by this. And for those of you who are newer to my channel and don't know, here's the short version of the whole situation. For me personally, I do not like Crystallized. In my opinion, Crystallized is one of the worst seasons in all Ninjago. So you may be wondering, if Crystallized is one of my least favorite seasons when it comes to Ninjago, then why is my biggest problem with Dragon's Rising Season 1 ignoring stuff from Crystallized? And that's going to take a bit of explaining to do. When it comes to Crystallized, there were a lot of things that happened during the season, and Crystallized put a lot of emphasis on a lot of this stuff. And towards the end of Crystallized, it looked like the season was setting up certain things for the future of the franchise. However, when it comes to Dragon's Rising, it doesn't really acknowledge any of this stuff. Certain things that were a really big deal during the events of Crystallized are never seen or referenced at any point during the events of Dragon's Rising. Brand new characters like Mayor Trustable and the new ninja are never seen at any point during the season. Certain concepts like Lloyd's Oni form and the ninja's dragon forms are never brought up during the season. And certain returning characters like Harumi, Garmadon, their storylines, and in the case of Harumi, her very ambiguous ending are once again never brought up at any point during Dragon's Rising. When it comes to Dragon's Rising, the season essentially ignores or drops a lot of the stuff that we saw happen when it came to Crystallized, and really the only thing from Crystallized that ended up getting carried over into Dragon's Rising was Nia becoming a human again, and that was it. That was the only thing from Crystallized that was carried over into this season. And so this leads me to wonder, given all the stuff that we saw happen during Crystallized, and given that Crystallized put a big emphasis on a lot of this stuff, yet when it comes to Dragon's Rising, it didn't do anything with that stuff, it just leads me to wonder, what was the point? What was the point of all this stuff happening during Crystallized if going forward it's not going to mean anything? What was the point of Crystallized introducing us to a brand new team of ninja during that season, only for the new ninja to never appear during Dragon's Rising, and for Dragon's Rising to also introduce us to 2 other brand new ninja during the season? What was the point of the ending of Crystallized setting up a lost power storyline for the ninja, only for the ninja to get their powers back in a book, and for Dragon's Rising to never reference the events of said book? What was the point of undoing Harumi's conclusive end that we got during Season 9, only for her to be brought back to life during Crystallized, and for the season to give Harumi a forced redemption and a very ambiguous ending that's up to interpretation, if we're not going to see what happened with Harumi after it, and so much more? Again, there were so many things that happened during Crystallized that Dragon's Rising never acknowledges. Again, when it comes to Dragon's Rising, the only thing from Crystallized that's carried over into this season is Nia becoming a human again, and that's it. Now, I get why this kind of thing happened. When it comes to Dragon's Rising, it is supposed to be a soft reboot for Ninjago, and it's meant to be something for newer fans, and they don't need to have watched all the seasons that came beforehand in order to understand the storyline of this season. That is something that I totally get. However, I feel like Dragon's Rising not acknowledging stuff from Crystallized wasn't a good idea, because like I said, it just leads me to wonder, what was the point? Additionally, another thing about this whole situation that really confuses me is the fact that when it comes to other soft reboot seasons for Ninjago, those seasons did continue on with things from the immediate previous seasons. When it comes to season 8, it was supposed to be the first season after the movie, and it was supposed to be a soft reboot for the Ninjago franchise, yet that season continued on with things that we saw from Lloyd, Wu, and Samurai X during season 7. And when it comes to season 11, it was also supposed to be a soft reboot for the Ninjago franchise, and it was supposed to be the first season in the Wild Brain era of the show, yet that season continued on with certain things that we saw play out during the Oni trilogy, and season 11 even concluded Lloyd's Oni trilogy storyline. So it just leaves me to wonder, how come Dragon's Rising didn't do the same thing? Again, the only thing from Crystallized that's carried over into this season is Nia being a human, and that's it. Meanwhile, everything else that happened during Crystallized is either dropped or ignored. Now, I'm not saying that when it comes to Dragon's Rising overall it will ignore stuff from Crystallized. Like I said earlier, based on the way things are looking, it looks like Garmadon may end up returning during Season 2 of Dragon's Rising, so it's possible that certain things that revolved around Garmadon during Crystallized could end up returning during the events of Season 2, but when it comes to my big issue with Dragon's Rising not acknowledging stuff from Crystallized, my issue is that Season 1 specifically didn't acknowledge stuff from Crystallized, and like I said, it just leads me to wonder, what was the point? And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. When it comes to Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, like I said towards the beginning of the video, for me personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of this season. While I feel like Season 1 of Dragon's Rising isn't terrible by any means, at the same time, I do feel like when it comes to Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, I do think it is overrated, and I don't think it's as good as a lot of people are saying it is. When it comes to my overall thoughts on Dragon's Rising, in my opinion, when it comes to this season, I feel like it's average to okay at best. There were definitely aspects about the season that I did like and thought were good. Stuff like the production of the season, the characterization of the original ninja, most of the new villains, and a few other things. But there were also some things about Dragon's Rising that I wasn't the biggest fan of. Stuff like the original ninja getting replaced. I feel like the merge wasn't handled that well. Like I said, I didn't like how the season didn't really acknowledge stuff from Crystallized, and more. And so when it comes to Dragon's Rising overall, like I said, when it comes to the season, I feel like overall this season of Ninjago was average to okay at best. And if I had to rank this season alongside the other Ninjago seasons that we've gotten, I would honestly put it in the number 14 spot on my list, right above Day of the Departed, but just below the Fire chapter. Again, I don't think this season is terrible by any means, but I also didn't think it was that great. With that being said though, I do feel like when it comes to Dragon's Rising, this era of Ninjago does have a lot of potential. One thing that you may have noticed during the video is that on multiple occasions, mainly when it came to the stuff that I wasn't that big a fan of, I said that on paper, a lot of these ideas worked. And that is something that I do stand by. I do honestly believe that when it came to Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, it had a lot of really good ideas. I just feel like when it came to Season 1, it didn't handle a lot of these ideas as well as they could have. However, I feel like when it comes to future seasons, they could end up handling some of these ideas better. Again, when it comes to Season 1, I feel like it didn't handle these ideas that well overall, but I do feel like when it comes to this era of Ninjago, it does have a lot of potential to be great, and we're just going to have to see what happens. But again, when it comes to Season 1 of Dragon's Rising, I wasn't the biggest fan of this season. As a soft reboot for the Ninjago franchise, I feel like it's alright. And while I feel like Season 1 of Dragon's Rising did take the Ninjago franchise a few steps in the right direction, at the same time, I feel like Season 1 of Dragon's Rising also took the Ninjago franchise a few steps in the wrong direction. But again, I feel like this era of Ninjago does have a lot of potential, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So tell me down below, what do you guys think? Tell me, what were your guys' thoughts when it came to Dragons Rising? Wait, did you like it or did you dislike it? Tell me down below and I hope you guys enjoy. Later guys, this is Dimension Master Studios, signing off.